Chosen ones, stop right now and take a breath, because this moment is not random and this pause is not accidental, and the stillness you feel pressing on your spirit is not weakness. It is God getting your attention before anything else tries to speak louder than him. There are times when heaven interrupts your momentum, not to slow you down, but to realign you. And this is one of those moments where God says, stop. Because if you keep moving at the pace of fear, at the speed of doubt, at the rhythm of pressure, you will miss the instruction that determines the next season of your life. You have been pushing through exhaustion, telling yourself you just need to try harder. You've been carrying weight that was never meant to be yours, thinking endurance alone would fix it. But God says stop, because obedience comes before effort and listening comes before action. And if you move without hearing, you may arrive somewhere he never sent you. You are not behind, even though it feels like everyone else is passing you by, and you are not forgotten, even though silence has stretched longer than you expected, and you are not disqualified because of the mistakes you replay in your mind at night. God saw those moments too, and he did not walk away then, so why would he abandon you now? The reason he wants you to hear this before anything else is because the noise around you has been shaping your decisions more than his voice lately, and he needs you to remember who called you before you were confident, and who chose you before you were qualified, and who covered you when you did not even know you needed covering. You were never selected because you were perfect. You were selected because you were willing and because God could trust your heart even when your hands were empty. There is a difference between being tired and being drained, and what you have been feeling is not just physical exhaustion, it is spiritual depletion from pouring into places that cannot pour back into you. God says stop, because some of what you call responsibility is actually distraction, and some of what you call loyalty is actually fear of letting go. You have been holding on to people, seasons, and expectations that expired, but you kept them alive out of habit, and now your spirit is paying the price. God is not angry with you for staying too long. He is simply calling you to leave before staying costs you more than you can afford to lose. Chosen ones hear this clearly. The delay was not denial, and the silence was not absence. God has been quiet because he has been doing deep work in places you could not see, and if he had explained it while it was happening, you would have tried to interfere. Some growth requires darkness. Some preparation requires isolation. And some transformation requires that familiar voices fade so his voice can become unmistakable. You thought you were being ignored, but you were being insulated, protected from influences that would have distorted what God is building in you. This is why certain doors closed without explanation, and certain relationships ended without closure, and certain opportunities slipped away even though you prayed for them. God was not punishing you, he was positioning you. Stop right now, because if you keep interpreting this season through human logic, you will misunderstand divine strategy. God does not rush what he values, and he does not expose what is not ready, and he does not release power without preparation. You asked for growth, and you asked for elevation, and you asked for purpose, but you did not realize that the path to those prayers passes through discomfort, discipline, and delay. This is not the season to quit. And it is not the season to compromise, and it is not the season to compare your journey with someone who was called for something different. What God placed on you requires a specific process, and the process cannot be skipped without consequences. There are things you are praying for that God has already approved, but he is waiting for you to align your mindset with what you are asking for. You cannot keep asking for peace while entertaining chaos, and you cannot keep asking for clarity while refusing to let go of confusion, and you cannot keep asking for direction while still looking back. God says stop because your attention is divided, and divided focus delays decisive movement. He wants you to hear this before anything else, because the next instruction will require faith, not feelings, and obedience, not understanding. If you wait until everything makes sense, you will miss the window of opportunity he has opened. Chosen ones, you have underestimated how much your obedience matters, not just for you, but for others connected to your calling. What you walk away from frees someone else, and what you step into unlocks doors for people who may never even know your name. This is why the resistance has been so strong, and the opposition so consistent, and the discouragement so persistent. The enemy does not fight what has no future, and he does not attack what carries no threat. The pressure you feel is evidence that what is inside you matters more than you realize. Stop right now, because you have been asking God to remove the pressure when he has been using it to refine you. Pressure reveals cracks, but it also creates diamonds, and what feels like breaking is often shaping. God is not trying to crush you, he is trying to concentrate you. He is stripping away distractions, not to leave you empty, but to make room for what actually belongs in your life. You have been mourning what you lost without recognizing what you gained in the process. You lost comfort, but you gained clarity. You lost familiarity, but you gained discernment. You lost approval, but you gained authority. There are conversations God wants to have with you that cannot happen while you are constantly moving, constantly scrolling, constantly reacting. He wants you to stop because revelation requires stillness and instruction requires attention. You keep asking for a sign, but he keeps asking for your focus. The reason he wants you to hear this before anything else is because what comes next will challenge old versions of you. And if you do not anchor yourself in truth, you will retreat to what is familiar, even if it is unhealthy. Chosen ones, you are not weak for needing rest. And you are not faithless for asking questions, and you are not broken because you feel uncertain. You are human beings shaped by divine hands, and transformation is rarely comfortable. God does not despise your questions. He simply does not want them to paralyze you. Trust does not mean you understand everything. It means you move even when you do not. And right now, moving means stopping listening and letting God recalibrate your heart. You have been measuring your progress by visible results, but God has been measuring it by internal change. You wanted proof, but he wanted purity of intenti. You wanted speed, but he wanted stability. You wanted recognition, but he wanted relationship. This is why some breakthroughs feel delayed, because God is more interested in who you become than what you achieve. Achievements can be lost, but character sustains you when applause fades. Stop right now, because there are thoughts you have been entertaining that do not come from God. Thoughts telling you that you are too late, too broken, too inconsistent, too damaged to be used. Those thoughts sound convincing, but they are lies designed to wear you down slowly. God wants you to hear this before anything else, so you do not build your future on a false narrative about yourself. You are not defined by your worst moment, and you are not limited by your past choices. Redemption is not just forgiveness, it is restoration. And restoration means God can use what hurts you to help others, chosen ones. The reason this message feels urgent is because timing matters. There are moments when obedience must be immediate and hesitation becomes disobedience. God is not asking you to have all the answers. He is asking you to trust the one who does. You have been standing at the edge waiting for certainty, but certainty often comes after the step, not before it. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is movement in spite of it. You have survived things that should have destroyed you, and you walked through seasons that should have hardened you, but somehow your heart is still soft enough to care, still sensitive enough to feel, still humble enough to seek God. That is not accidental, that is preservation. God kept you through storms you did not even recognize because he knew this moment was coming. And now he says, stop, because what you do next will either align you with his will or pull you into unnecessary struggle. Do not rush this moment away. Do not numb it with distraction. Do not talk yourself out of what you feel stirring inside. That stirring is not anxiety, it is activation. It is the awareness that something is shifting and that you cannot remain who you were and still become who you are called to be. Growth always demands change, and change always demands courage. You are closer than you think, even if it does not feel like it. Progress is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet and internal and invisible. God works underground before anything breaks the surface. Roots grow in darkness before fruit appears in the light. If you dig up the seed every day to check if it is growing, you will kill it. Trust the process even when you cannot see the progress. Stop right now, because comparison has been stealing your joy and draining your gratitude. You have been looking sideways instead of forward, and it has distorted your perception. Someone else's pace is not your assignment, and someone else's breakthrough does not delay yours. God is not running out of blessings, and he is not confused about your address. What is meant for you will find you when you are ready to receive it. This is not the time to shrink back, and it is not the time to play small, and it is not the time to abandon what God placed in your heart just because it scares you. Fear often shows up when purpose is near. The size of the calling determines the intensity of the resistance. If what you are stepping into feels bigger than you, that is because it requires God to move through you, not just you moving alone. Chosen ones, hear this slowly and clearly. You are not alone in this season, even when it feels lonely. God is closer than your next breath and more involved than you realize. He is guiding even when you cannot feel it and protecting even when you cannot see it. Stop right now and let that truth settle, because what comes next will require you to remember this when emotions fluctuate and circumstances shift and opinions change. There is more ahead than behind you, and there is purpose in what you survived, and there is meaning in this pause. God wants you to hear this before anything else, because once you move forward, you cannot pretend you did not know. This awareness is an invitation and an atvetstenosti that will shape your choices. Take this moment seriously, not with fear, but with reverence. Breathe and listen and allow God to speak beneath the noise. You do not need to figure out the entire path. You only need to be faithful to the next step. Clarity unfolds with obedience, not with overthinking. And as you sit in this moment of stillness and attention, you may begin to notice that the heaviness starts to lift, not because everything is solved, but because you are no longer carrying it alone, and you are no longer rushing ahead of the one who walks before you and behind you and within you and around you. And as this realization deepens and your spirit becomes more receptive, you will find yourself standing at the edge of understanding. Not yet complete, but undeniably moving toward what God has been preparing you for all along. And the shift begins quietly inside before it ever shows up on the outside. And this is where the real journey starts and continues forward without stopping the rhythm that has been building within you. And as you remain here in this space, you begin to realize that the stillness is not empty. It is full of instruction, full of correction, full of reassurance that God has not lost sight of you for even a second. The pause you are in is not punishment, it is preparation. And the reason it feels uncomfortable is because you are being stretched beyond familiar limits. Growth always feels strange before it feels strong, and obedience often feels risky before it feels rewarding. God is training your discernment in this season, teaching you to recognize His voice without needing dramatic signs or constant confirmation. He is showing you that His guidance is steady even when your emotions are not. You've been tempted to rush ahead because waiting makes you feel powerless. But God says waiting is not weakness, it is trust in motion. When you wait with intention, you are not standing still, you are aligning yourself with divine timing. There are battles you avoided simply by not moving too early, and there are mistakes you did not make because God slowed you down when you wanted to speed up. You may never fully know what He protected you from, but one day you will look back and realize that delay saved you from devastation. Chosen ones, you have felt misunderstood in this season because you no longer fit the expectations people placed on you. You are changing, and not everyone knows how to adjust to the new version of you. Some will try to pull you back into old roles because it makes them comfortable, but God is calling you higher, and growth often creates distance before it creates alignment. Do not shrink yourself to make others feel secure. The right connections will recognize the shift and celebrate it instead of resisting it. There are habits God has been quietly convicting you about, not because He wants to control you, but because He wants to free you. What you repeatedly entertain eventually shapes what you believe, and what you believe determines how you live. God wants you to stop right now because He is exposing patterns that no longer serve your future. This is not condemnation, it is invitation. An invitation to choose differently, to think differently, to move differently so you can experience differently. You have prayed for God to use you, but usage requires availability, and availability requires surrender. You cannot hold on to control and still walk fully in purpose. Control feels safe, but it limits God's ability to surprise you with better outcomes than you imagined. Surrender does not mean passivity. It means trusting God enough to release the outcome while still showing up in obedience. That balance is what God is teaching you now. There are moments ahead that will test what you believe more than what you feel. Moments where obedience will cost you comfort and truth will cost you approval. God wants you anchored now so you do not drift later. If you settle this in your heart now, it will save you from confusion when pressure increases. Decide in advance that obedience matters more than convenience and integrity matters more than applause. Chosen ones, you have been stronger than you give yourself credit for. You survived seasons where you had no clear direction, no clear affirmation, and no clear answers, yet you kept moving forward even when your steps were shaky. That resilience was built in hidden places, and God values it more than visible success. He trusts you with weight because you have learned how to endure without losing your compassion. Strength that keeps kindness intact is rare and powerful. Stop right now and recognize that your sensitivity is not a flaw. You feel deeply because you were designed to discern atmospheres and understand hearts. Do not harden yourself just to survive. God will teach you how to guard your heart without closing it. Wisdom does not require numbness, it requires boundaries. Boundaries allow you to love without losing yourself. You have been wrestling internally because your spirit knows you are outgrowing certain environments. The tension you feel is not confusion, it is clarity forming. God is making it uncomfortable to stay, so you will be brave enough to move. Comfort can become a cage when it keeps you from becoming who you are called to be. Trust that the discomfort is purposeful. There are prayers you whispered that God answered quietly, not with fireworks, but with subtle shifts in perspective, with increased discernment, with the courage to say no where you once said yes. These are not small victories, they are foundational ones. Breakthrough is not always loud. Sometimes it is the strength to walk away. Sometimes it is peace in the middle of uncertainty. Sometimes it is choosing obedience when no one is watching. Chosen ones, you've been carrying guilt for not being where you thought you would be by now. Release that burden. God does not operate on your timeline, and He is not measuring your worth by milestones. He is more interested in your readiness than your speed. Being early can be just as harmful as being late if you arrive unprepared. Trust His timing even when it challenges your expectations. You may feel like you are standing alone in some decisions you are making, but you are not isolated, you are being distinguished. God often separates before He elevates. This separation is not rejection, it is refinement. He is narrowing your focus so you can move with clarity instead of confusion. The fewer distractions you have, the more clearly you can hear His voice. Stop right now and let go of the need to explain yourself to everyone. Not everyone is meant to understand your process. Some people only recognize outcomes, not journeys. God sees the journey, and that is enough. When the time is right, your life will speak louder than any explanation you could give. You are learning to trust God in ways you never had to before, because the level you are approaching requires a deeper reliance on Him. Familiar strategies will not work where you are going. God is inviting you to lean into faith instead of formulas. What worked before may not work again, and that does not mean you failed. It means you are evolving. Chosen ones do not despise small beginnings. What feels insignificant now may be the foundation for something far greater. God often hides big things in small starts, so pride does not contaminate purpose. Stay faithful in what seems ordinary. Consistency in the unseen is what prepares you for visibility without compromise. There are fears you have not voiced because you think acknowledging them makes you weak. God already knows them, and He is not intimidated by them. Bring them into the light. Fear loses power when it is confronted with truth. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it. You have been sensing a call to deepen your relationship with God, not just through words, but through obedience, through stillness, through intentional choices. This is not about religion. It is about alignment. God is inviting you into intimacy that sustains you when circumstances fluctuate. The closer you walk with Him, the less shaken you will be by external noise. Stop right now and recognize that you do not have to earn God's love. You operate from love, not for it. Obedience is a response, not a requirement for acceptance. When you understand that you move differently, you rest differently, and you trust differently, grace does not excuse growth. It empowers it. Chosen ones, you are entering a season where discernment will be more valuable than popularity. Choose wisdom even when it costs you attention. Choose truth even when it costs you comfort. Choose obedience even when it costs you convenience. These choices shape destiny. You have learned lessons in private that will one day help others publicly. Do not rush to share everything prematurely. Some testimonies need time to mature before they are released. God will tell you when to speak and when to remain silent. Timing matters as much as truth. You may feel pressure to have everything figured out, but clarity often comes step by step. God rarely reveals the entire picture at once because He wants you to walk with Him, not ahead of Him. Each step of obedience unlocks the next instruction. Trust the process, even when the path seems incomplete. Stop right now and breathe again. Notice that you are still standing, still believing, still seeking. That alone is evidence of God's sustaining grace. You did not get here by accident, and you will not move forward alone. The same God who brought you through past seasons will guide you through the next ones. Chosen ones, there is a quiet confidence forming in you, not based on circumstances, but on trust. This confidence does not need validation because it is rooted in knowing who called you. When you know that you are chosen, you no longer chase approval, you walk in purpose. You are learning that obedience sometimes looks like waiting, sometimes like speaking, sometimes like letting go. It is not always dramatic, but it is always intentional. Stay sensitive to God's leading even when it challenges your comfort. As you continue to sit with this message, let it settle deeper than emotion, deeper than motivation. Let it become conviction that guides your choices when no one is watching. This is how transformation becomes lasting. You are not starting over, you are continuing with greater awareness. Every experience, every delay, every disappointment has added. Wisdom, not wasted time. God redeems. Nothing is lost in His hands. Stop right now and acknowledge that something inside you has already shifted. You may not have all the answers, but you have clarity about what you cannot return to. That awareness is progress. You are moving toward a season where your obedience will speak louder than your words, and your consistency will speak louder than your intentions. Stay grounded, stay humble, stay attentive. And as you remain open and receptive, the understanding continues to unfold quietly, steadily, without forcing, without rushing, without fear, and you find yourself walking forward with a deeper sense of trust, a calmer spirit, and a growing confidence that even though the full picture is not yet visible, the path beneath your feet is being made firm step by step as you continue moving in alignment with what God is revealing in this very moment without breaking the rhythm that is carrying you forward into what lies ahead. And as you keep moving forward in this awareness, you begin to notice how your reactions are changing even before your circumstances do. Things that once triggered you no longer have the same grip, and words that once wounded you now pass through without lodging in your spirit. That is not emotional numbness, that is maturity forming quietly within you. God has been strengthening your inner world so your outer world no longer dictates your peace. This is the kind of growth people rarely applaud because it happens where no one is watching, but it is the kind that sustains you when pressure increases. You are starting to recognize patterns not just in others, but in yourself, and this awareness is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. God is not exposing these things to shame you, but to free you. Freedom requires honesty, and honesty begins within. The more truthful you become with yourself, the less power LD cycles have over you. This is why God asked you to stop and listen, because moving forward without self-awareness would only repeat what he is trying to end. Chosen ones, you have been praying for confirmation while God has been asking for commitment. Signs follow obedience, not the other way around. You do not need another sign to do what God has already placed in your heart. What you need is courage to act on what you already know. Doubt often disguises itself as wisdom, but wisdom moves with discernment, not hesitation. There will be moments ahead when your faith will be tested, not by hardship, but by opportunity. Open doors can be just as dangerous as closed ones if they pull you out of alignment. Not every opportunity is assignment, and not every invitation is instruction. God is sharpening your discernment so you can tell the difference. This is why he wants you rooted now, because distractions ahead will be subtle, not obvious. You are learning that saying no is sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do. No protects your energy, your focus, and your calling. You do not owe access to everyone, and you do not need to attend every table you are invited to. God prepares specific spaces for you, and being in the wrong room at the wrong time can delay what he is trying to do through you. Stop right now and reflect on how far you have come emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You are not who you were, and that matters. Progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply choosing healthier responses and quieter confidence. God celebrates those moments even if no one else sees them. You have been feeling a deeper pull toward purpose rather than popularity, and peace rather than performance. This shift is intentional. God is rewiring your desires so they align with what will sustain you long term. Temporary applause fades, but purpose anchored in God produces fulfillment that lasts. Chosen ones, you will face moments when obedience isolates you. Not because God wants you alone, but because clarity often requires solitude. In those moments, remember that isolation is temporary, but compromise can have permanent consequences. God uses solitude to speak identity over you so you are not swayed by opinions later. There are wounds you thought were healed that resurfaced recently, not to hurt you again, but to confirm how far healing has come. What once broke you now only reminds you of God's faithfulness. Healing does not mean forgetting, it means remembering without pain controlling the narrative. You are being invited into a season where faith becomes practical, not just emotional. Faith expressed through daily choices, discipline, consistency, and integrity. The mundane moments matter just as much as the miraculous ones. God watches how you steward the ordinary because it reveals readiness for the extraordinary. Stop right now and notice how your prayers are changing. You're asking less for rescue and more for alignment, less for escape and more for strength. That T-shift shows maturity. God does not always remove the storm, but he strengthens you to walk through it with authority. Chosen ones, there will be days when you feel ahead and days when you feel behind, but do not let fluctuating feelings define your faithfulness. Consistency beats intensity over time. Keep showing up even when motivation fades. Discipline will carry you where feelings cannot. You are developing a deeper trust in God's character, not just his ability. Knowing he can move is different from trusting that he will move at the right time and the right way. That trust settles your spirit and anchors your hope beyond circumstances. There are conversations you will soon have that require wisdom, not emotion. Speak truth, but speak it with grace. Authority does not require volume, and confidence does not require defensiveness. God is teaching you how to communicate from a place of security rather than reaction. Stop right now and release the pressure to prove yourself. You do not need to validate your calling to anyone. God's approval is not earned through exhaustion. Rest is not laziness, it is obedience when God commands it. You are stepping into a version of yourself that values peace over chaos, depth over surface, and purpose over pace. This version does not rush validation or chase affirmation. It moves steadily, confidently, grounded in identity rather than performance. Chosen ones, you may still face uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer paralyzes you. It invites you to trust deeper. Faith does not remove uncertainty. It gives you the courage to move through it without losing hope. You are learning that God's voice is not always loud, but it is always consistent. The more you listen, the more familiar it becomes. Discernment grows through relationship, not repetition. Stay close, stay attentive, stay open. There are things you will soon outgrow that once felt essential. Do not grieve too long what no longer fits. Growth requires release. God cannot fill hands that refuse to let go. Stop right now and acknowledge the quiet strength forming within you. Strength that does not need to dominate or control. Strength that stands firm without hardness. That strength is evidence of God's work. Chosen ones, you are being positioned to lead not necessarily with titles, but with influence. Influence begins with character. People are watching how you handle pressure, how you respond to disappointment, and how you treat others when no benefit is attached. You have learned that obedience is not about perfection, but persistence. You will stumble, but you will not stay down. Grace lifts you, correction guides you, and humility keeps you teachable. You are entering a season where clarity increases, but so does responsibility. What you know now will require action later. Awareness comes with accountability. Prepare your heart now. Stop right now and let gratitude rise. Gratitude grounds you when ambition tries to rush you. Thankfulness keeps you aware of God's hand, even in unfinished seasons. You may not see the full picture yet, but pieces are coming together quietly, intentionally. God rarely rushes his best work. Trust the timing, trust the process, trust the hand guiding you. Chosen ones, the journey ahead will require courage, but you are not lacking. Courage grows as you move, not before. Take the step, even if it feels small. Movement breaks stagnation. You are learning to listen before responding, to wait before acting, and to pray before deciding. These habits shape destiny more than talent ever could. Stop right now and remember that you are held even when you feel uncertain. God's grip on you is stronger than your grip on him. As you continue forward in this rhythm, let peace become your compass and truth your anchor. Let obedience shape your decisions and trust steady your steps. The path unfolds as you walk, and the strength increases as you remain aligned, and the journey continues deeper, wider, fuller than before, as understanding keeps growing and clarity keeps sharpening and purpose keeps pulling you forward into what is being revealed moment by moment, without rush, without fear, without needing everything resolved as the movement continues. And the unfolding goes on, and the walk does not stop, but carries on seamlessly into what awaits next, as you stay attentive, open, and willing to keep moving forward. In this same flow, chosen ones, as you step out of this moment and back into the movement of your life, carry this truth with you like a steady flame that does not flicker when the wind rises. You were never stopped to be stalled. You were stopped to be strengthened, centered, and reminded of who walks with you. What God has spoken to your spirit in this pause is not meant to fade when noise returns. It is meant to anchor you when decisions get heavy and paths feel unclear. You do not move forward alone. You move forward aware, aligned, and upheld by a purpose that was written long before you understood its weight. Let this be the moment you trust what God is doing even when you cannot explain it, the moment you choose obedience over urgency and faith over fear. You are not late, you are not overlooked, and you are not unprepared. You are becoming, and becoming takes time, courage, and trust. Walk forward now with quiet confidence, steady resolve, and a heart that listens before it leaps, knowing that every step taken in alignment carries you closer to what was always meant for you, and the God who called you is faithful to complete what he began in you.